when you start Googling, am I drinking too much? Am I an alcoholic? You have a problem. And rather than sitting there diagnosing, is it a bad enough problem? You just should recognize that it is a problem. And once you start addressing the problem, everything changes.
Your midlife crisis? It's a rewrite. I'm Megan Brown Martinez, creative professional, recovering perfectionist, and fellow traveler through the messy, messy middle. Here, we follow the Radiant Rewrite Protocol, 5 steps to moving forward in midlife. Release what's heavy, regulate what's raw, rebuild what's fallen apart, rewrite what no longer fits, and radiate what's next. From nervous system healing to creative renaissance, these real stories of midlife rewrites are where breakdowns become breakthroughs and your second act comes to life. Welcome to the Radiant Creative Podcast. You're in the director's chair, so let's begin your rewrite. Today's conversation is for every high achiever who looks like they've got it all together on paper: the career, relationships, the image, but quietly suspects that something isn't working anymore. My guest, Rachel Mack Martin, is the author of Functional, a high performer's guide to achieving freedom from alcohol. Her story begins inside the pressure cooker of corporate finance, where late night client drinks and constant performance were part of the job. And it unfolds into a powerful journey of truth, recovery, and reinvention. Welcome, Rachel. I am so glad that you're here.
Thank you, Megan. I appreciate you having me.
You were checking all of the boxes, and that really resonated with me. You had said, I am getting up and going to work every day. I'm exercising at 5 a.m. I'm feeding my dogs. My house looks beautiful. Everything is perfect and clean. My husband is fed. And that brings me to my midlife concept of masking, those labels that have been put on top of us throughout our lives. So can you tell me about your early career and your early life and where maybe what some of your masks may have been?
I would say that I was always a high performer. I did well with school. I attended college early. And so on a very surface level, I felt like I knew how to perform. I had more somewhat traditional values. I grew up in the Midwest in Minnesota. I was raised Catholic, going to church. And, I did the things like went to college, got a good job in financial services, worked my way up through the corporate ladder. I got married. We did the things like I bought a house. I went back to school for my MBA. But the way that I was handling stress was really by drinking. And so I would perform throughout the day, wake up, I'd work out, I'd go to work. And then I come home and 5 o'clock was like wine o'clock. And what really started my habit is around 2007, 2008, I had very serious work stress. And I came home and started pouring a glass of wine,
Mm-hmm.
which, seems really, really normal.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much it turned into this habit where, every night I came home, poured myself a glass of wine, and then one glass became 2 glasses, became 3 glasses, became more. And it
Right.
really became like my crutch.
In 2008, that tells me that was maybe the great financial crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was working in financial services at the time,
Wow.
was a bond trader.
Mm-hmm.
So I was working in an environment that was, trading's always seen as a very high stress job. And it was very few females in fixed income trading. I definitely felt different than like a lot of my coworkers just because I was a female.
Mm-hmm. I was listening to the Mel Robbins podcast the other day, and she had a gentleman on who talked about the concept of collective illusion. It's the idea that we do something because we think everyone else is doing it because they want to be doing it too. But then it turns out that they're all doing it because they think that everyone else wants to be doing it too. I'd love to hear about your experience as a young woman in business, as a woman in such a male dominated field, and your process of sort of going up the ranks of that very competitive ladder, and where drinking might have slid in through either interest in fitting in or that sort of sense of collective illusion. I'd like your experiences as well as what you think about the culture of that kind of community in general.
I definitely view drinking as like something you do professionally. And I talk about it in my book. I think that's how people network. And I could
Mhm.
think of a couple of my jobs I knew someone and they're like, oh, you'd be great in this role. We'll refer Rachel. And, there were someone like I met at happy hour or, professionally. And it was just kind of something you did. I think there's a lot of occupations where that's pretty common, especially within financial services. And would I have had a problem if I was in a different occupation? Possibly. But it was very socially acceptable, I think.
Yes.
And especially for me, too, I had this very funny attitude where like, I kind of viewed beer as maybe like a working class male drink,
Hmm.
but wine was like what sophisticated young
Hmm.
professional women drank. And so that
Yeah.
was really my drink of choice.
Yes. I can remember it was very, very exciting to get to go to beautiful restaurants and be served at gorgeous tables. And may I present you with a bottle of wine, madam? Oh, why, yes, you may. And beginning to learn about these things. And it does feel also glamorous and elegant and quite so mature and grown up. There's definitely an allure to it. Did it help to smooth over any insecurities you might have had as a young woman in a very difficult professional field?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely felt more relaxed. I kind of felt like, okay, you go to different business dinners and you share like a bottle of wine that's very custom, that's very common. And that's when like the industry trade conversations kind of happen.
But you never would have gotten that complete inside information if you weren't sitting right there for several hours, just socializing, just being together, and just drinking.
Yeah, perhaps. Now I probably think differently, but at the time, that's what I thought.
And how so now would it feel? Does that feel different? Because that's
Well,
interesting that from a different perspective, that maybe there were not, maybe the opportunities wouldn't have been lost without it.
Well, yes. So my perception used to be really everyone drank.
Hmm.
And now that especially like I've been alcohol free for a long time, what I find especially true is that a lot of high performers or very powerful people actually don't drink or they
Hmm.
barely drink because
Hmm.
it's that, loss of control. There's a lot of people who, if they want to perform optimally, or if they're really into wellness, their drinking is just not really a part of it.
Even the younger generations coming up, do you feel that that generation is also coming in with the same expectations of fitting in the same way that you did at the same age?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure that they are. And, that's like a universal feeling. I would be part of more Gen X
Yes,
culture, or I should say generation. The younger generation statistically doesn't tend to drink as much.
exactly.
I think there's more knowledge, at least like I would say like the past maybe 2 to 3 years, maybe about more harmful effects of drinking.
Hmm. So at what point for you did fitting in stop feeling worth it?
Boy, I don't know if it ever stopped. So I've always been very conscious of, at a certain level professionally, I think you have like a job to perform or like an image to perform. So
Hmm.
I don't know if that ever really has changed.
Let's take a pause here. In this first part of Rachel's story, we've seen how masking can look so much like success, accomplishments, confidence, keeping it all together for the world to see. But underneath, small cracks form as costs quietly mount. Up ahead, we move from masking to the uncomfortable honesty of unmasking, when you can't keep the facade forever and the real story begins to surface.
Was definitely having not so much rock bottom moments, like rock bottom where you lose your job, you get a driving under the influence or some other repercussion. But I was having a series of convincers and things that when I started looking at them stacked up together, they really pointed to that I really should at least take a break from
Mm-hmm.
drinking.
You bring up the gray area. I'd love to hear more and introduce our audience to your idea, your concept of gray area drinking. Do you want to,
Yeah,
could you please share
absolutely.
a bit more?
Yeah, so it's a concept started by a woman named Jolene Parks, and it's considered to be basically this in between stage of excessive drinking and just like everyday drinking. It's more like you may realize that you're drinking too much, but no one would say that you are an alcoholic or like you should absolutely quit. But there is this nagging feeling that you're drinking too much. You also likely could stop drinking. Like, say, so for example, maybe you take a week or two off and you're not going to be chemically addicted or something like that. So that is the concept of gray area drinking. I viewed myself really as more of like a functional alcoholic. I don't
Mm-hmm.
love that term. I'd like to say, like now, I like to say that I'm alcohol free. But if I go back and I look at really where I was on the spectrum, it was more like, and that's the title of my book is called Functional. And the interesting thing is there actually isn't any books out there that I could find that had that title. And so throughout the book, I really talk about the functionals, people who can perform well. I had cute pets. I had a house with hardwood floors. I could go to my job. I had a marriage. Well, I'm still married to that person, but I had these things, but I did definitely have a drinking problem.
Functional. I love how you have made full use of that word. You're a high performer. You're a girl that knows how to get it done. You can do all of the things. You have incredible willpower, incredible intelligence, and incredible ability to analyze a situation, understand what the structure is, and dive right into it and make it work for you and make it probably work for everyone else around you. And then I love the idea you've used that title for your book because then that's one of the categories of alcoholism.
Yes.
It's like a word that functions so very well all the way around.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks. And there's lots of plays on it too, I guess, in the book, because really I saw myself differently than I talk about like the stereotypical guy that's a bum, that's like living under the bridge and he's drinking, his bottle of whiskey from like a paper bag. And I didn't see myself that way. And even you go to some 12-step meetings and people really talk about these horrific bottoms of very serious DUI, prison sentences, that type of thing. And that really just wasn't my story.
Right. You're like, that's not me. I'm buffered from all of that. I've got it all together. I'm
No.
good.
But it's also problematic too, because, well, maybe I'm not bad enough. Maybe I'm not bad enough to quit. Maybe this isn't a problem. And really what happened for me is I decided to take 30 days over September.
Mhm.
And that's when I really too came to grips like, oh, I had a problem. And this is really, really tough to stop. It got better, definitely gotten better. And I'm really happy being alcohol free. I've been sober for 7 years and it's completely different. But at least originally, yeah, I wondered if I was bad enough to really stop.
I'd love to hear more about that 30-day September because as I was listening to the book, it sounded almost easy-ish. And I'm guessing that maybe it wasn't. And so I'm wondering how you mentioned the first 7 days and sweating and struggling a little bit there. You
Yeah,
succeeded from that point. So you
which
didn't
is
have to stop and restart?
I didn't. And I spend a lot of time in recovery rooms. And I will tell you, my experience in that aspect was in some ways unique because
What's a recovery room? I don't know what that
yeah,
means.
like, just like a rooms of recovery. So like a 12-step meeting, or there's various, recovery online sobriety support meetings. That's that type of thing. I talk a lot about it in the book. My mindset originally was really focused on moderation. And
Hmm.
that I thought was really the problem. I thought the problem was, Rachel, get it together. Like, you can do this. Like, run 10 miles on like a weekend. Why can't you just figure out, how to moderate? And so that's really for a long time where I was really stuck. And I talk about kind of different moderation attempts that I have in the book, but it really wasn't until I quit for 30 days. I didn't know, like, if that was gonna be, like, my final, time drinking, and
Maybe just a pause,
yeah, I thought I was just gonna take a pause, kind of figure it out. Um
prove I can do it.
yeah, exactly. Heck, maybe I don't even have a problem if I can go 30 days. That's really what I did, and, I think it was tough. I so the first part of my book is really all about my life and what like a functional is and different signs and convincers and worries that I had about drinking. And the next couple sections are really more about like how you do it.
Hmm.
What are some tips and tricks that I'd recommend? The biggest thing I think that was most challenging is when you drink, you have a constant and consistent habit loop.
Hmm.
And that's the part that's hard to kick because you got to change. Instead of me walking in the door after work at 5 o'clock, and 5 o'clock used to be 1 o'clock.
Hmm.
Now, I had to change habits and have sparkling water instead.
It's striking how everyday habits, repeated over time, can become deeply entrenched. What starts as a coping mechanism becomes a pattern that's hard to break until the moment comes to unmask what's really going on. Next, we'll delve into the reckoning, facing the growing evidence, the personal convincers, and accepting that denying the problem only keeps us stuck. Stay tuned as Rachel unpacks her pivotal moments of self-confrontation. What was your original process and how did you literally repattern your evening so that you wouldn't go straight to that?
It took a lot of willpower and a lot of change. So, I started listening to a bunch of different recovery related podcasts. Day 14, I did attend my very first AA meeting, although I really don't do AA today.
What was it about that moment that said, I'm going to go and show my face with these people and get that support?
Well, I had decided I was going to do a 30-day, and that's all I was really trying to commit to. And I'll tell you, 30 days was a big deal for me because I was a daily drinker and I could not remember getting past day 3 for like years, like
Mm-hmm.
7 years, 10 years. I don't even know. I mean, I would always have this pattern since about 2007, 2008, where I'd walk through the door, pour myself a glass of wine and make dinner. That was my pattern. So I decided to do these 30 days and I said, I'm very tenacious. And it's like, darn it, I'm going to do this. Come hell or high water. I had listened to a podcast about someone going to AA and they kind of changed my perspective because they sounded like a normal, accomplished person. And I
Mhm.
thought to myself, I'm going to check out in a woman's AA meeting and I'm just going to check it out, an exercise class.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do a spin class or Pilates class. I'm just checking this world out a little bit. And to be honest with you, I went to kind of disqualify myself too, because
I don't
I'm
need to
like,
be
maybe,
here.
yeah, yeah,
There's
exactly.
they're
Maybe,
more messed up than I am. I'm okay because I've got
yes.
everything else together. I've got my boxes checked.
Yeah, exactly. And very interesting thing is I will tell you, I felt immediately like I was at home. I felt that these people, because they talked about things that I did, things like hiding bottles, right? Because you drink more than you want. Maybe, you're showing your husband, oh, okay, these are my bottles at the top of this closed shelf in our pantry, but there's maybe a few hidden bottles. And they laughed about it. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, that was me too. And so in that meeting I went to, I found other women who seemed normal, like seemed like, they had healthy families, that they were really just all there trying to figure it out. And my perception changed. And so I started doing two things. So I started attending AA meetings, and then I also joined an online recovery group as well.
Let's back up a few minutes because we've gotten into talking about your process of
Yeah,
I'm taking my 30 days, I'm training for my marathon. I've got this and so you've set a goal. But I'd love to move back in the story a little bit into what I would consider your unmasking phase where the
sure.
cracks are starting to show and things are kind of starting to fall apart because you bring up as you've already mentioned in the book your convincers and your worries. And you have a couple of really great stories, one of which was the fire and the boots and the moms and the
Yes.
curb. I would love to for you to tell that story because sometimes certain things can happen where in our sort of unmasking process and as we're trying to figure out who we really are and what's really happening, certain things just pop up to the surface and make it oh so very, very clear that something's not right. Would you mind to share some of your stronger
Yeah.
stories about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I didn't find necessarily a truth with the rock bottom moment. I found a truth of the unmasking, as we talked about, over several convincers. And so, and I think I like to talk about convincers because I think you can have like a bad moment, right? You can maybe you're at a wedding, you drink too much. Oh, I never drink that much. That was just a thing. But if you start having recurring convincers, like I said, they stack up and they can let you know that, okay, this isn't just a one time thing. This actually, is a series of things that are problematic. And so one of my convincers is I lived in a suburban neighborhood, and one of the women was going to have like a campfire for all of the women like in the neighborhood. And I was excited about it. I don't have children, but lots of people in that neighborhood did have children. But I felt comfortable going there and I was excited to go. It was during the fall. So, like, I purchased like the cute tall boots and I went there. Everyone started talking about their kids, and that was like all the conversation. And, I kind of felt just not really part of the whole thing.
Mhm.
And I'm like, it'd be so rude to leave. So I started drinking more. And I'm like, I don't know what to talk about with these women. I went home and basically woke up the next morning and I got up and felt terrible because I actually did drink too much and had a hangover. And I looked at the side of my bed and I'd taken off my boots, and one of my boots had the heel completely burned, like so terribly. Like
Yeah.
there would have been no way I would have actually been able to walk in these boots. Like, how did I not feel that? Like, what the heck? And then,
And you had no recollection of it whatsoever?
no, I didn't.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
And I wake up in the morning and exercise. So, like, I felt terrible and I go for a run around the neighborhood and I see the party organizer, the person who had the party, and she kind of was like, "How are you feeling this morning?" And I was like, "Oh, shoot."
Fine.
Yeah, like she kind of gave me this look. And then I
Mm.
saw another one of our neighbors who I was good friends with, and she basically tactfully pulled me aside and she said, "Yeah, you had a lot to drink last night." And she said, "Don't worry though. We watched you get in your car, drive down the block." She's like, "You kind of went over the curb and it was a little messy, but we made sure we watched and we saw you get out of the car and get safely home." And I was just like mortified, right? Just
Yeah.
mortified because I was like, did I really? Oh my gosh. I mean, and so it was this moment that I was definitely very embarrassed about.
Hmm.
But it ended up being, like I said, in that convincer of, yeah, I actually do have a problem.
She was brave to say something because so many suburban neighborhood moms
Yeah.
might not. She was that to me sounds like a true friend, and not I guess enough of a friend to have driven you home your herself, but enough of a friend to say, "Hey, let me pull you aside and tell you something that you don't want to hear, but that I know you need to know."
Yes.
So things were bubbling up all around the same time. A couple of things happened and said, "Hang on, wait a second."
I did have a situation where I came home late from being out with girlfriends, and it was just like a stupid week night, which normally I didn't jeopardize work. And I went out way too late on a weeknight and came home and was pretty buzzed. And my husband got really, really mad. And we'd had these little tiffs and fights about drinking, or me drinking too much in particular. And he's not a drinker. Maybe he'd have maybe like 6 beers a year.
Right.
He just
Just
wasn't.
barely.
Right, and I was more the extreme, but he got really mad at me, rightfully so, and basically said, "Rachel, if you get whiskey plates on our vehicles," which to explain to people who aren't in certain states, so in the state of Minnesota, what can happen is if you get a DUI, they put a W on your license plate. So what that means is that a cop can pull you over more readily, and what happens is it's not just on your car, it's on every car that's under like your insurance policy. So basically, my husband said, "Rachel, if you get whiskey plates, I'm leaving you." And
The
that,
scarlet letter, right?
yeah,
Your scarlet W.
yeah.
Yes.
And
Wow. Yeah.
and that was like, my most important relationship. And I didn't stop drinking that day. It was like a few weeks later, I'm like, okay, I'm really gonna try this month, because it was one of those moments like, that you're screwing things up. And I was screwing things up with my most important relationship.
Now, you bring up something that's very vulnerable and very important and has to do with your husband. The moment that he expressed to you how hard it was for him, and he asked you a very poignant question. Would you
Hmm.
mind to share that experience?
So it was another convincer, but there was like a weekend where it was like I had drank in the afternoon and then took a nap, and he came to my bed and was basically like, knew that I had been sleeping because I had been drinking. And he was like, "Rachel, why am I not enough? Why am I not enough?" And I was like, here's this guy, like he's just, he's a good guy. And like we did all these different things together. And one of his talents is he's very handy. And so he had, done this extensive like renovation on our house, basically like building this house from this, like with his two hands, you know,
Literally
yeah,
building the house.
exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Here was this guy who is like doing all these things, and he's looking to me like, why am I not enough? Like I couldn't answer him. How do you explain to someone this glass of fermented grape juice is more important than you? Like it's crazy. It's unexplainable, really. But that was another convincer.
You mentioned it being a choice. Like, why am I choosing this over choosing you? Was it a
Right.
choice? Do you feel like there was any conscious choice?
And I would say, I don't know. It starts to not become a choice the more that you drink. And because I think with addiction, it isolates you from choice, actually. And I'm not saying that people like you should just give people who have this issue like free reign and they have no choice because, I ended up having a choice and changing. But it's really a tough thing because I talk about it in my book where, I had this spiral where it was like I'd wake up hungover, I'd work out, I'd go to work, and I'd tell myself, like, I'm not going to drink that way again today, tonight. I'm not going to do that. And then you do. And it's like this terrible, like, Groundhog's Day and habit loop that you just cannot get out of.
It's striking how everyday habits, repeated over time, can become deeply entrenched. What starts as a coping mechanism becomes a pattern that's hard to break until the moment comes to unmask what's really going on. Next, we'll delve into the reckoning, facing the growing evidence, the personal convincers, and accepting that denying the problem only keeps us stuck. Stay tuned as Rachel unpacks her pivotal moments of self-confrontation. Hey, quick pause. I just wanted to say thank you for being here inside the Radiant Creative Podcast. Every listen, share, and review helps this show grow and helps other Gen X women find their own rewrite. So if you're resonating with what you're hearing, please tap follow, leave a comment, a quick review, or share this episode with a friend who needs it. All right, let's get back to the conversation. I'd be really curious to hear about your perspectives on anxiety, high performance, and utilizing alcohol as a way to modulate that.
I definitely didn't have good coping mechanisms. And so when I had got sober and I started basically getting better and having to really just sit with things just by getting rid of alcohol, I pretty much got rid of most anxiety. Like now, for example, it's more common for me to take a hot bath before I go to bed. So I sleep well. Alcohol, I talk about in the book, like I was going to my doctor, please put me on some type of sleep medication because I cannot sleep. And what you find is that when you're consuming a lot of alcohol, it really, really messes up with your REM sleep. And I had probably been skipping over REM sleep and not getting very good sleep for years, especially because I was more of a daily drinker. I had to really figure out other coping mechanisms and, like I said, baths or, tea.
Did that doctor prescribe the sleeping pills you were asking for? Did he give them to
No,
you?
no, it was a female. And
Oh, excuse me. Yes.
I live in the state of the Mayo Clinic, and I had a Mayo Clinic trained doctor. And I'm so happy I had her because she was really from the standpoint of you do these different sleep regimens. And one thing on her regimen was actually, to limit or not drink. Of course, I ignored that advice, but she had a whole regimen that she had recommended. And she just is like, I don't prescribe sleep medication. That was really, she's like, I really don't unless we've tried all these different steps before. And that was her philosophy.
That sounds like a blessing. You have an amazing quote that really stuck with me. I think your quote is, "This is what addiction looks like when alcohol hijacks your brain into considering accepting less."
I talked about the guy living under the bridge, drinking from
Mhm.
a paper bag.
Mhm.
And I think when you progress into addiction, the more you progress, you kind of start to see your life that way. Because it was like, okay, I have this husband and he doesn't really drink and he's obviously very fed up with me and maybe we're just not a match. So you start to think, okay, well maybe I leave this marriage. And then you're like, well, I have this house that I'm gonna leave anyways. And boy, this house is hard to take care of. And maybe I just need an apartment, like a smaller, simple apartment. And, oh, this job's a lot of stress and maybe it's too hard. Maybe I'll just take, a lesser job. And I think that addiction really makes you small because you start to really say and internalize in your head, maybe I just need to be less or not have these things that are challenging, like, husband who's confronting me about drinking. And then my life will be better.
That is very poignant. That idea that as one sinks into one's weakness, whatever it may be, whether it's anxiety or alcoholism or drugs or depression or whatever insecurities, that sense of no longer saying, ta da, world, here I am, I'm ready to be.
Yeah.
Instead, you start to shrink in and close down. That's a huge part of the reckoning is when do you start to feel that phase instead of that young sense of I'm ready to go, you start to close in and shrink down, more willing to accept less and to keep accepting less.
Yeah.
So if you didn't hit rock bottom, you were able to still keep checking off all of the boxes. You succeeded at your 30 days. How did you decide then the husband's worth it, the job is worth it, the house is worth it, I'm worth it? Can you tell me how you wrestled with that then? How you went from that moment where you started considering closing down and then you said, wait a second, hang on, this all is worth it?
30 days was really pivotal because, you really get alcohol out of your system and you start kind of learning how to operate in the world without a security blanket. All this takes time and in several days. I started to feel just very physically just great. In a lot of circles they call it the pink cloud, and you feel the sense of like euphoria and happiness because that, alcohol's out of your system. And then I also started to feel just like more accomplished and, because it was something forever I was trying to, or I want to say like 2 or 3 years, I was trying to figure out the moderation. But I started feeling really good just not drinking. And that it was a feeling too that propelled me forward. And so at like the end of the 30 days, I was like, I don't know. Like it seemed too big to me to say I'm never going to drink again. But I'm like, I'm just going to keep going forward and going to keep staying like this. Like, I don't know if it's going to be, how long this is going to go, but I like this. I'm feeling really good. My husband noticed, of course, and he was cheering me on. And so this was a good thing too, because like the relationship I'm in, he was very supportive as well, and that was positive. So I just kind of kept going. And then at about 90 days, I had a moment where I thought I might go back, but I had some conversations with people that kind of propelled me going forward. I decided new goal would be 1 year. And
Mhm.
I just kind of kept going, I guess, since then. And part of the deal is just being alcohol free. And I really I like that word a lot because it has the word free in it. And
Mhm.
and I felt free. Like I didn't feel like I was chained to, having to come home and drink or having to think about where I was going to, get a drink from or like, buying all my wine bottles for the week and all these different things. There were some social things that I had to consider. What am I going to tell people?
Mhm.
I do recommend getting it out of your house. at least in the early days to do that. And yeah, I just kept going and I'm really happy I did.
What began as sobriety soon became self-discovery, the moment when healing turns into creation. As we move into the rewrite, Rachel shares how putting words on paper helped her reauthor her story and what it means to truly begin again. You conquer it, you hit it segment at a time, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, let's do a year. At what point do you say, I've got to write a book? Because that's a big step.
I started journaling in the evenings because, right, I wasn't drinking and I needed like something to do. And so I just kept kind of journaling. But I go on this women's retreat and I am able to just like sit and be calm. And they're like, giving you these journal prompts of like, what do you really want to do? And like, what comes to you? And I'm like, I want to write a book. Book is about, we'll call it 50,000 words. And I knew from this Google Doc that I had like 25,000 words. And so I came back from that retreat and I got a book coach. I could think about some of the sections of the book, but I couldn't think about how to end it and like how to make sure all the structure. And I needed someone to kind of help me through that. Basically, we met like for about 10 weeks and I would write a couple chapters. He would give me feedback. And then, I would write like a few more and he would help with the structure as well.
Mhm.
And so that's how I ended up writing a book.
Amazing. Do you think that the act of writing the book helped you reauthor your identity as you were rebuilding it?
Yeah, I do. It's been really interesting because and I did a lot of this in more like private and more secret. My husband knew about it, of course. I didn't tell my family until about 2 weeks until the book was formally published. Just because I didn't want to like jinx anything. The stats are something like 86% of people want to write a book. Only
Mhm.
1% do.
Mhm.
But I didn't really see myself as an author until I actually published the book.
Fair
And
enough.
yeah, so I would say I've almost had more of an identity shift since I published it basically back in May. Guess I have this other identity because I've just, like, oh, okay, I like to journal and, write creatively and but when you put your story in a book, it's formalized and it's official.
And it's official and you're like, I'm an author.
Yeah,
Here it is.
yeah,
Yes. We go from the reckoning to the rewrite. And I just was so excited when I came across the post where I found you.
yeah. Thank
And
you.
I saw so many people responding to your book and how much it meant to them and just even the idea of it meant to them. And that is so much of the work that I want to do here with Radiant Creative is this idea that we have these little things inside of us. The little girl sitting quietly reading all those books doesn't know that she wants to be an author, but those seeds were planted so long ago. And you checked the boxes. You did all the right things. You got the big degree. You got the big job. You have the big house. You have all the things. And then it's taken this process of masking, unmasking, reckoning, and for you to say, hang on, I'm really an author. How do you feel that that combines with your corporate identity as one question? And then also, how have you felt sharing something that can be quite vulnerable? You're in a high level management position in a
Yeah.
very formal industry. I would love to hear about your process of dealing with any vulnerability you may have felt or not, any struggles you may have had with that. I'm about to show my parents. I'm about to talk about my relationship with my husband in front of other people. And
Right.
I have a big company that I work with and for that is now going to have this laid out in front of them. I'd love to hear about your journey for that part.
I wrote the book that I really wanted to read. And I didn't see it necessarily in the marketplace. Like a lot of books out there about, rock bottoms or memoirs of, women just like leaving their children and things like that. And that just wasn't, my story. I just found so much freedom, and it really became like a passion project. Like, I think to myself, if I would have written a romance novel or the great American fiction book, like, I don't know if I would have had the passion to just see what it takes to create a book, because it's a process. It's very difficult. That really wasn't my background. So it was kind of hard to write a book and to self-publish, etc. Being a corporate person, I really was worried about that, like, being more out. It's not so much of a worry for me now because it's been so many years. I did, though, meet with an employment lawyer, a person who also stopped drinking as well. So they were very compassionate to, my questions, and they answered very honestly. I work in financial services and I have securities licenses. In order for me to receive outside compensation from something other than my profession, and I actually have to file a form, and I have to specify that I'm basically getting book royalties. And so I had to submit this very formal form. I'm not going to mention my company's name. I'm writing this book. It's part memoir, part self help. I did tell my boss about this, and, he was very supportive. I was really at this point where, hey, I've been alcohol free a really long time, and I'm just sick of the stigma with it. And I really also thought the book would help people. I thought that in particular it helped women, because the book is, it's from my story, and it's very much more like female focused. But all those things, like, I did really think about what would be the implications, but I thought, you know what? I'm sick of the stigma that people have. And I feel really good about this way of life. I want more people to know about it. I want more people to see that they don't have to necessarily hit a rock bottom, and that there's options out here. I wrote in my book, here's all these different things I did, and I tried to structure it like a high performer would.
Hmm.
Like, here's the plan, and here's some options for a plan.
I think your book will resonate, and does resonate so much with so many people because of women working through these incredible, high powered, stressful jobs. Mom wine culture.
Yeah.
There's so many hashtags, mom wine, hashtags this and that. Let's drink wine and paint things. And
Yeah.
it's pervasive throughout the culture when you're young, and you can counterbalance it just simply by being young and drinking some water and going for a jog and being okay. But
Mhm.
as you start to age up a little bit, it becomes harder and harder to mask the difficulties that it's bringing to you. I think that your book just has incredible resonance and value, because I genuinely think people will listen to this podcast, listen to your other podcasts, and just reconsider, because you are a woman that they can see themselves in. Yes, I'm competent. Yes, I am capable. Yes, I have lived a good life. I'm still living a good life. And people need courage sometimes, a little boost, that little sense of push of, I'm doing this. Come on, you can do it too.
Yeah, yeah, and that's really too, why I wrote the book. I wanted to give people like an insight into like I said, recovery rooms and different considerations. I do talk about how to taper. Lots of people may be worried about how much they're drinking, but they would be very embarrassed to go into, a detox, or they just wouldn't go into maybe like a formal program, or like a rehab center or anything like
Hmm.
that. And so I do give some advice on that as well, which I'll tell you, I didn't find a book that was related to that. I found some articles online, but I really tried with this book to be comprehensive and
Hmm.
just give you the kitchen sink, the best tips and tricks, and everything I'd recommend if you were like me, if you were like a functional and you were seeking help and you were seeking answers.
I love something that you get into, and I want to encourage our listeners to get your book because it's so full of ideas in the second part. The first part is your story. And as you move on, it walks you through so many ideas that are relevant both to wanting to become alcohol free, but they're also really relevant to just reinventing yourself and rewriting your life. And you bring up a concept that I just loved. You talk about dating yourself.
Yeah.
Dating yourself. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. So much of women's lives, especially as wives and mothers, are all focused on, rightfully so, the people in their lives
Yeah.
that we take care of. We're focused on husbands, we're focused on children, we're focused on now and parent care and elder care and just making sure that everyone around us is okay. I want people to pick up your book so that they can look through all of your tips, which are really about coming back to yourself in
Yeah.
so many ways.
Yeah.
And all those little moments is where you can start to say, you say, what am I interested in? What do I want to do? And
Yes.
you really, it's very easy to lose that. So I really appreciate that your book is an opportunity, is a guidepost for both becoming alcohol free and for personal reinvention all the way around.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I like that section too because and it can be people getting alcohol free, but yeah, to your point, it's really figuring out, when I got sober, I was really like, okay, what do I actually like? It's sometimes it starts by what do you not like? I talk about dating yourself. It would be like going to a bookstore or, cute little shop or something like that, that you would find to be delightful. When we take a step back and we think about what we like and what we like to do, it's very good and it's very nurturing. And I think it fills you up.
So, as we kind of wrap this up, is there anything that you wish that you had known earlier that you now hope that your story can teach others?
I got into this whole, am I bad enough? Is this problem bad enough for me to stop? And the cover of my book basically has a laptop and it has a picture of like a Google screen. And it's basically like me searching, like, how do I know if I'm drinking too much? And really the question I was putting into the Google search bar was, am I an alcoholic? I was looking for something to like disqualify myself. And I was asking the wrong question. When you start Googling, am I drinking too much? Am I an alcoholic? You have a problem. And rather than sitting there diagnosing, is it a bad enough problem? You just should recognize that it is a problem. And once you start addressing the problem, everything changes. We have all these things like, oh, I want to lose 10 pounds or I want to, save money or do this. And for me, when I addressed my biggest problem, all these other things that really weren't as big of a problem like melted away. In the year I got sober, I didn't have it as a goal, but I lost 16 pounds. I automatically started saving more money. I got promoted without being asked, so I moved up in my career. My relationship greatly improved, right? I go from a husband who says, basically, maybe we should get a divorce to, seeing me do this thing and keep my word. But we've had a much stronger, deeper relationship now because he can trust me.
So, look at your own Google search
Right.
and understand that, as you say very clearly, if you're asking the question, you know what the problem is already.
Yes.
Yes. Well, Rachel, I want to thank you so very much for your candor, for your honesty, for your willingness to continue to evolve by writing this book and delving in and finding for yourself what your next path is by becoming an author. Do you think you have any more books inside of you?
Maybe we'll see. I really did like writing. It's a lot of work, but yeah. And I'm working on embracing this identity as an author. So,
Great.
and it's great, Megan, because it puts me in this pathway I didn't really see coming, where like I get to meet wonderful, creative, and talented women like yourself. So it's definitely opened some doors.
Well, my whole project is about creating community. I want to create a space and open a space where women can come together and be honest and be vulnerable and say, this is what I really, really want. And I don't want to throw away my whole life. And that's part of what I really loved about your book is it's not the story of throwing away your life. It's not the story of divorce. It's not the story of running away from your kids and blowing everything up, because I think that we can still come back to ourselves and find the next version of ourselves without destroying everybody else's world that we have, that count on us and that love us.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Now, Rachel, where can people find you? Where can they find your book? Are we following you on social media? How can people be in touch with you?
Yeah. So my name is Rachel Mack Martin. My book is functional. Sometimes I know it doesn't show up here, but it's Functional, a High Performer's Guide to Achieving Freedom from Alcohol. You can purchase it on Amazon. It's in paperback, Kindle, and also Audible. And I love Audible books and listening to Audible, so that was important to me to have it. As far as social media, I am on Facebook, but I tend to hang out more on Instagram, and it's just under Rachel Mack Martin.
Okay, great. Well, we'll put all of those on the screen. I will definitely have an Amazon link in the show notes in any platform where we publish this so that people can easily purchase your book on Amazon. Thank you for having an Audible version of your book as well.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me on, and I appreciate the read, and I really appreciate our conversation.
Thank you so much. I do too, from my heart. Thanks for spending this time with me inside the Radiant Creative Podcast. If something in today's episode helped you release, rebuild, or just remember who you are, take that with you. Let it ripple out. You can find the free guides and resources from radiantcreativeliving.com. And please join us in the Radiant Creative community, where midlife women like you are gathered to share stories, resources, just midlife together. And if this conversation felt like an exhale or a connection, please share it with someone else who's ready for a rewrite. Until next time, stay grounded, stay radiant, and keep rewriting your story.